So I wanted to talk more also about hub and spoke events.
Sure.
Could you explain what this method is to our listeners?
Yeah. So what we're seeing is we think of this as a bridge strategy between when we were only virtual as we move into hybrid and eventually get back to the part where we can have 40,000 people all in one place. Hub and spoke is just taking that meeting or that event and breaking it down into smaller versions. So I'll just give you an example from our life is every year AT&T hosts an event called Summit. It's usually about 5,000 people in Dallas. But right now they can't have 5,000 people come to Dallas because they can't fly, they can't stay in hotels, they can't travel, all that. So what we're doing with them is we're having a smaller footprint meeting in Dallas, but we're doing versions of that in LA and Chicago and New York. And so you might have 1,000 people at the core site, but then you might have up to 500 people or whatever's allowable at these kind of pod areas in these different areas. And that's the, hub and spoke method. It's all then tied together on a virtual platform. So everyone is experiencing the same event, but they're experiencing it in their own way. And so you've got, especially this works very well for regionalized events where you might want to have, you could be, say you're throwing a rave and you want to throw one in LA and one in New York and one outside Chicago and one in Austin. It's perfect. Let's then tie that all together with a virtual platform so everyone's experiencing the same thing. And I'm going to date myself here, but it goes back to something that happened many, many years ago that some of your listeners may have heard of. Is there was a concert called Live Aid, and it was 100 years ago. And there was at the same time on the same day there was a huge concert in London and a huge concert in Philadelphia, and they telecast the concert to each other at the same time. So when we were sitting in Philadelphia watching the live band there. In between the live acts in Philadelphia, we were watching on a huge screen the live acts that the London audience was watching. And it's really that same idea. Instead of having one event where everyone is in the same place for the time being, you're creating mini events that are all tied together in a way so that you can get more people to experience the live part of it than you would if you try to do it all at once, say, in one location.
Gotcha. So it's more so for in-person experiences, correct?
And then you have it's both, but the key to having the in-person experiences is to tie it together, and that's why it's hybrid. Is because if you just have 5 small in-person events, you don't have five main speakers, you don't have 5 hosts, you don't have it just costs too much to replicate that 5 times. But if you do a core event as the hub and then the spokes around it and you tie it together, you can leverage that same budget into multiple locations. And so it's like I said, that's why we call it kind of a bridge strategy is once things free up, everyone's going to come back to one location because it's less expensive to do one location. Yeah. But until we can do that, you still want to generate that engagement and the excitement of the live event. So why not do 5 or 10 500-person events that are tied together and try to do one event where you can't get that many people.
Exactly. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really know much about that either before I started looking into it. What strategy tips would you give event professionals, planners listening that are looking into implementing this type of method or model for their next event?
So I mean, it's a great question. And again, the key is hub and spoke. So the hub is, that's where your main stage is happening. That's where your most speakers are. That's where your CEO is going to show up. That's where your main act is going to show up. And then your spokes are smaller versions of that. Mm-hmm. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be that the hub, the core event is really the event. And then everyone else is sitting there in a room together watching it on TV. You actually need to create dedicated local or regional content. So in other words, you might have your CEO show up and interview Elon Musk in your main event, but then you want to have your regional VP in Los Angeles interviewing somebody on the stage there that's relevant to that audience. And so you want to definitely create almost an event that could stand alone in each location, but again, then tie them together or virtual so you get the big pop from the main core. We've seen folks try this and they basically are like, well, we're going to have a watching party. And it just doesn't work because people can stay at home. They don't need to go to a theater to watch your event that's happening 5,000 miles away. The key is to design each one so that it could stand alone, but then leverage it into something bigger by connecting it.
Makes sense. And so with that, that means you're marketing to separate audiences depending on these different small groups.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
one point. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you think of it as kind of an umbrella marketing, the event itself is the tent pole. And then within each region, you're focusing on that regional event and what you're bringing to that. But you're also enabling your core event to drive interest as well. So if you've got your keynote speaker as Elon Musk, that's going to be interesting to everybody. But locally, we're going to have some great entrepreneur that's well known in the LA market, or maybe you're working with your customers, your clients in that market, or if you turn that into, say, a music festival, you've got local bands that are playing in LA and local bands that play in Chicago. The headline act might be in Vegas where the main event is, but you're localizing that content in a way, and then you're marketing to those people that they're going to experience the entire thing, but they're going to have something devoted to them in their region. So they don't have to get on a plane. They don't have to stay in a hotel. They can just drive in and park and be safe,
Yeah. And I feel like that's where people would mess up on doing this model, because they would think, okay, we have our main event, so we're going to market that and not break it up and reach those different audiences.